The power is back on. Welcome to NHL Wraparound Short Shifts for Tuesday, October 21st, 2025. Vic and Neil here. Then again, we were here yesterday on Monday and recorded the show, but like so many people, were affected by the AWS outage. So we've decided to come back, do a show to recap the weekend and also Monday's games. But we had a lot of good stuff also, so hopefully we can repeat here.
We can add in what happened last night and go back and give you all the juicy stuff from over the weekend.
Before we get to the hockey stuff, you're a Toronto guy. You got to be happy today.
Yeah, I watched that. I was stunned at their comeback. That was something, wasn't it? I mean, anytime you get a baseball game, I don't care who's playing, and you think a team is going to lose, and suddenly at the very end they win, especially at home, and especially in a place where they haven't been in the World Series in 32 years.
Since back-to-back appearances in 92, 93, George Springer with the big home run in the seventh inning,
and they might have won three in a row. You know, they might have won three in a row in the 90s, but the lockout of 94 stopped them from having a chance to win three in a row.
Good point. And you got to feel for Seattle. They've never been to the World Series. They win the first two games in Toronto. They're primed to go home and finish this off quickly. And instead, that'd be one rotten plane ride back to the West Coast after the game last night.
Oh, for sure. And then losing the first two home games, you get the third home game of the three that you get in the middle there. Seattle did, but then you come back and you can't get it done back in Toronto. Toronto's actually able to win both their home games, and so yeah, that would be a miserable ride back to Seattle from Toronto, Ontario last night.
Tell you what's not miserable: sPix. Since we were last on Friday, 12-2-4. We were 4-1 on Monday, but your only loss coming at Madison Square Garden, where the Rangers ended their home goal drought at the start of the season at 180 minutes and 57 seconds. Temi Panarin, who actually played very well in Montreal, also with a 4-point game, got the Rangers on the board in the first minute, and apparently New York thought that their work was done for the night because Minnesota really steamrolled them throughout that game.
Yeah, especially in that first period. They were ready to play, and I happened to talk to Bill Guerin last night during the game on text, and he said that was the best period of the season so far for them, was that first period at Madison Square Garden. So, I mean, the Rangers still have the same problem that they've had. They can't score goals. I think they're missing Kreider, to be quite honest with you. They don't have that net front presence at all right now. And the guys that they do have that have the cojones to go in front of the net and hang out and be there aren't the player that Kreider is. They're not as good a player.
They're fourth-line guys.
Yeah. So, you know, we're going to see. And Panarin's still doing his dancing and stuff. He's a great player for the regular season, and on nights when the other team's not prepared, he could really eat you alive. But it's going to be interesting to see what the Rangers can do. I mean, we're all calling them to make the playoffs, and I am, but if they can't win home games, they're not making the playoffs.
Danilo Yurov scores his first NHL goal at 8:16 of the third period, which proved to be the winner in the 3-1 win for the Wild. Rangers are now 0-4 at home, outscored 9-1. And Monday was the first of their 8th centennial nights celebrating the 100th anniversary of the franchise. Talk about stinking up the joint.
Yeah. I find it surprising that they're only got 8 nights celebrating the franchise of 100 years, and you're only picking 8 games out of 41.
Every night is themed, and of course there will be 7 more as this season goes on. But before we move on to other stuff, because obviously we didn't get the show out yesterday because of the outage, but in our original record, we had mentioned whether or not we thought the Rangers would score in the first 7-19 and avoid the all-time minutes record from the start of the season for scoring a home goal. You said that they wouldn't score. I said that they would. But, of course, like the Bubble Lock Challenge, I can't catch a break because it was the pick that nobody heard. It's like when the tree falls in the forest and nobody's there, does it make a sound? I'm the tree.
Right. Did it really fall? That's the thing. When a tree falls in the forest, if nobody's there, did it really fall? And so we don't know if you really said that. I mean, I'll take your word for it that you said it, but
you were there.
I know, but I don't remember. I don't remember back that far.
I may have to insert the clip in here just so people can hear that I actually said it. All right, let's move on. Hey, can we get everybody out of a funk by just mentioning their shortcomings?
I think we can, because we certainly got Mr. Ovechkin to score his first goal on Friday evening, only 1:19 into the third period, in their win over the aforementioned Minnesota, who did not look good that night against the Washington Capitals. 898 now in Ovechkin's career.
And you remember how I had did a little bit of chirping on John Gibson after getting pulled opening night against the Montreal Canadiens, and I said John who because of the way Cam Talbot has played. Red Wings are now 5-1, and more importantly for Gibson, he played on Friday and Sunday. Outstanding against Tampa, very good against Edmonton, 3 goals against on his next 50 shots. And for the Red Wings, if this tandem is everything that we have, quite frankly, expected to be, things are looking up in Hockeytown.
Well, 5 straight wins for the Detroit Red Wings right now. So, yeah, things are really looking up. And by the way, they're looking up somewhere else, too, and that's in Western New York, where the Sabres won 2 in a row, believe it or not. They beat Ottawa and they beat the Stanley Cup champs. After starting that miserable 0-3 and us having Mike Harrington on here to talk about what they need to do differently. He's a columnist, of course, from the Buffalo News. He came on and said, well, they got to get some power play goals. They got to do a number of different things. They did them all. And their power play went 5 for 7. They were a different team in the last couple of games.
They did drop a 4-2 decision in Montreal on Monday, but I watched that entire game, and they were right there with the Canadiens. So you can clearly see the uptick in play for them, and they're going to get more tests coming up, with 3 coming up in 4 nights later this week. They host Detroit on Wednesday, which will be a great test for both clubs to see exactly where they're at. And then they have a home-and-home with Toronto Friday and Saturday.
And they usually do well with the Leafs over the history of these two teams, at least in the last decade. For some reason, Toronto doesn't play that well in Buffalo. Perhaps that's because there are so many Maple Leafs fans that jump over the border and go to the games in Buffalo, and maybe it feels like a home game and they don't play as hard. But we'll find out that it's a couple of good tests for the Buffalo Sabres.
Let's talk about the frustration of the finalists for the last 2 Stanley Cup finals. That on Saturday, Florida Panthers lost their 4th consecutive game in Buffalo, and that was the 2nd straight win for the Sabres. It's a 3-0 shutout for Alex Lyon. But in that game, Brad Marchand took a cross-check in the back from Sabres captain Rasmus Dahlin, and then re-engaged Dahlin, got on top of him, started throwing punches. Tage Thompson jumped in, and somehow, after the scrum was done, Marchand ended up with Dahlin's helmet, took it into the penalty box with him, ripped off all of the straps, and then threw it back on the ice, and that earned him a $5,000 fine.
Yeah, that is a Marchand move for sure. And kind of something that maybe should have got you a game misconduct from the referee. I mean, you can't do that stuff. That's a little childish, I would say.
Some good little comedy there, and that only sets the stage for Marchand's return to Boston Tuesday evening when the Panthers tried to snap their losing streak, where Marchand won his first Stanley Cup with the Bruins in 2011. Hey, how about what's going on with the Edmonton Oilers? Their road trip has been somewhat underwhelming. They weren't great in Madison Square Garden week ago Sunday against the Rangers, weren't good at UBS Arena, lost on Saturday to the New Jersey Devils, and then traveled to Detroit, where they lost to the Red Wings, and kind of a sign of the way things are going. Late in that game, they're down 3-2. A broken play resulted in a breakaway for Leon Draisaitl in the final 2 minutes, and as he went to make a move, the puck jumped over his stick. What's going on in Edmonton?
Yeah, there's not much good going on right now in Edmonton. I got to tell you, I watched that game pretty closely, and they're a fun team to watch, Edmonton, usually. And Connor McDavid looks like there's something wrong because he had one good shift, I thought, in the Detroit game. And other than that, he really didn't notice him. And that's hard to even imagine not noticing 97. So tonight they go into Ottawa and play the Senators and an all-Canadian matchup before heading home, and then playing Thursday against the Montreal Canadiens. This will be Edmonton's third game in 4 nights, so don't expect a big turnaround from them. Ottawa, of course, will be missing Brady Tkachuk, their captain, and but they'll be looking to get a win. So that'll be a good one, and another test for Edmonton of what is going on with them.
Two desperate teams. I think both teams have to have this game.
Well, I wouldn't think that Edmonton is going to want to head home and have the record that they've got. They beat the Rangers. They lost the Islanders. They lost to the Devils. They lost to Detroit. You're going to want to win one before you head home to that home crowd to play the Montreal Canadiens. And then they head back on the road again for 2 games. So, you know, the Western teams, it's all about travel.
A little bit of good news for the Oilers, and that defenseman Jake Wallman off IR and available for the game in Ottawa. Let's talk some unbeatens and a battle of heavyweights in Vegas Monday for anybody that stayed up and kind of avoided the crap that was on Monday Night Football between the Seahawks and the Texans last night. This was a real good hockey game. Carolina came in 5-0-0. Vegas 4-0-2. So obviously neither team having lost in regulation. The Golden Knights prevail 4-1. Jack Eichel with his 7th goal leads the NHL in scoring with 16 points. Right now, he looks like the best player in the NHL in the first month of the season.
He sure does. We just talked about Connor McDavid and that he's not playing that well. He still doesn't have a goal. And Jack Eichel, who was picked right there with him in the same draft, looks tremendous right now. But it's not for the Buffalo Sabres where it should be, who picked him in the draft. It is now for the Vegas Golden Knights.
Some injury news coming out of Vegas. Adin Hill left the game for the second in 5 starts this season with an apparent left leg injury, stretching to make a save in the first period. Kira Schmid came in and played extremely well. And if Hill is out for an appreciable period of time, then it's going to be Schmid's net for a little while. And if Hill cannot make the trip to the Southeast Gauntlet for the Golden Knights, Carl Lindbaum is expected to be called up from the AHL Silver Knights, with Carter Hart perhaps waiting in the wings somewhere starting as early as December 1st.
But he'll need some playing time with the Henderson team before he gets any shot at going to play for the Golden Knights. So hopefully Adin Hill isn't hurt as badly as it looked.
Hart will be able to start playing in the AHL 2 weeks prior to December 1st. He can start playing on the 15th of November. And that kind of adds to some of the other injury woes that Vegas is suffering, because Noah Hannafin and Brett Howden are out. And as we know, Alex Pietrangelo was lost for the entire season. So this team is going to be tested early, but boy, they sure look good.
Yeah, they do. It's a real good start to the season. You know, Vic, I hate to say this because it's going to sound so silly, but, you know, when you start the season 5-0-0, like Carolina has, you've almost guaranteed yourself the playoffs already. And when you start the season the way that San Jose has, who, by the way, play the Islanders tonight, you've almost taken yourself out of it. They don't have a regulation win yet. And that's going to be hard to make up. I'm just saying, I like saying this stuff real early in the season. I mean, yes, we are in October. We're very, very early. But these points and this start or lack thereof start is so important to how the rest of the season plays out.
We're going to get to another one of those teams that has started very slowly this season in a few minutes, but I just want to hit on a couple of the other unbeaten teams in regulation. Seattle was 3-0-2 entering Monday's game against the Philadelphia Flyers. Flyers are playing pretty well under Rick Tocchet, 3-2-1. They get a 5-2 victory over the Kraken, handing Lane Lambert his first loss behind the Seattle bench. Owen Tippett, who had a lot of struggles last season. I had him projected as one of my breakout players. Well, I'm a year late. He's up to 5 goals already. And aside from Vegas, Colorado is the only team in the NHL without a regulation loss, and they will host the Carolina Hurricanes on Thursday. So a lot of good action from a lot of good teams around the NHL so far.
It has been a really good start. By the way, those same Seattle Kraken, of course, go in to play Washington tonight after losing last night to Philadelphia and Rick Tocchet. So that's going to be a tough game for them. Washington did not play last night. So look for the Caps to try to jump on the Kraken.
Yeah, well, they got kind of a late wake-up call against the Vancouver Canucks on Sunday. Fell behind 4-0, and then almost pulled that game out.
They did almost at the end, but it was too little too late and weren't able to come all the way back. But I would imagine there'll be a lot more awake tonight, and somebody in the dressing room will say, no, let's get cracking.
You were waiting all morning to say that. So now that you mentioned, or we mentioned, that Caps-Canucks game, let's jump ahead to a few other games that have kind of raised our eyebrows that we've taken notice of. Canucks have 3 straight wins on a 5-game road trip. They overcame multi-goal deficits in Dallas and Chicago, and then won, as we said, in Washington. On Sunday, they've got 2 more games in Pittsburgh and Nashville on this road trip. But some personnel news for the Canucks. Brock Besser missed that game for personal reasons. Possible that he is back for the game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. At least the Canucks are hoping for it. And on the injury front, Filipino left the game late in the first period on a hit from Tom Wilson that, after review, initially it was a major penalty, and then the penalty was completely rescinded. The league followed up on Monday, no supplemental discipline. But now, how often can we look at Filipino down on his knee after a hit being tended to a trainer?
It's terrible. And the way they had to carry him off his arms around 2 of his teammates to get him to the bench, to the trainers, to be taken down to the locker room. It's terrible. It's frightening, and it's sad, quite honestly, because this is a good player, but he's had a lot of head trauma, and that's not good for later in life. It's just not good. And I hope that he's okay, but if he has to not play anymore, he'd be better off not playing than taking more head trauma.
He's already had 4 documented concussions, and of course we don't know what has been undocumented. He is on IR, as is Jonathan Lekkerimäki, who also left that game in the first period after taking a hit into the boards, and Teddy Bluger left the game for the Canucks in the third period with a leg injury. So the Canucks are going to be tested for their depth. But beyond that, Neil, Adam Foote has done a really good job with this club in the early going. And you have to think that it's a fresh approach. There's a lot of toxicity that is gone from that room from a season ago because we had Elias Pettersson and JT Miller, that whole drama going on. Brock Besser's contract, Rick Tocchet, is he going to stay? Is he going to go? And of course, we know now he's in Philadelphia. So it's almost as if this club has been able to band together with players now that want to be there and are playing very well early on for Foot.
They are. And tonight they play the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Penguins are back in their barn after a West Coast road trip. First game back from a road trip, which is quite often a tough game for the hometown team because you get back from a road trip, you start worrying about personal stuff all over the place, like any of us do. We get home from, then we start to think about, okay, what do we got to do? And your mind goes away from the task at hand. So we'll see if Vancouver can keep going when they play the Penguins tonight. My guess is they will.
Penguins did play well on that road trip, winning 2 out of 3. They beat the Sharks and the Kings, and they lost very late in the game to the Ducks on a goal by Chris Kreider. So interesting matchup coming up between the Penguins and the Canucks. Monday evening, Winnipeg beat Calgary 2-1. Mark Scheifele, who is one of my favorite players in the NHL, just a skilled power forward. I mean, a true power forward. Scores the game winner with 4:54 left on a marvelous feed by Kyle Connor. You know who else scored in that game for Winnipeg?
Jonathan Toews.
First goal in 30 months in 8 days. It was a power play goal on a tip-in of a Neil Pionk shot. But on the other side of the coin, the Flames are now 1-6-0. They played well, but I believe the lack of player movement to upgrade this team during the course of the offseason, combined with not having a real true backup for Dustin Wolf in goal. Devin Cooley has played, but is he suitable to really spell Wolf for a series of games while the Flames try to get themselves back into this? This is a dreadful start.
It is. And I talked about earlier about bad starts. Calgary was a team that I really was going to mention. You start the season 1-6. I think you've pretty much taken away your playoff hopes. And I hate to say that. It sounds silly 7 games in, but it's really true, isn't it? I mean, you can't only get 2 points out of a possible 14.
A couple of years ago, we saw Edmonton get off to somewhat of a similar start, and Jay Woodcroft was let go and Chris Knobloch took over. But the Flames don't have the kind of firepower that the Oilers had, and this team still struggles to score. And you also have to wonder, and this was something that Jeff Marek brought up in our season preview, that if this slide continues to go, when do they start moving their UFAs or their pending UFAs? And Rasmus Andersson, defenseman who actually had the only goal for the Flames on Monday, is right at the top of that list, making only 4.55 this year.
And he's a heck of a player. So, well, it'll be interesting. We got to keep an eye on Calgary and keep an eye on Craig Conroy and see what he does as the season goes on.
I want to go back to Sunday for a second because Joel Quenneville returned to the United Center, where he won 3 Stanley Cups behind the bench for the Blackhawks in 2010, 2013, and 2015. Was not given any special recognition because he had actually been recognized when he was head coach for the Florida Panthers. And he's not part of the Blackhawks centennial celebration plans this year. The Ducks did fall 2-1 in that game to Chicago. And there was an interesting headline in the New York Times that said, as Joel Quenneville and the NHL move on, don't forget what they're moving on from.
Yes, exactly. And it is a black eye in the NHL, this incident that happened back in 2010. And the fact that none of the adults in the room took any action to stop what was being reported. And sure enough, the perpetrator who did this ended up being able to do it to another young man and ended up in prison for it. So perhaps if he had been reported and they had taken it more seriously back then, this perpetrator wouldn't have been able to commit these crimes on someone else. So that's the thing that these guys are going to have to live with. Stan Bowman, Joel Kenville, and the others, that they didn't take the proper action. Having said that, we've all made, bad judgments, and I don't want to be too hard on these guys because I'm sure they all regret their inaction back then.
Terribly unfortunate, and unfortunately those two young men that were victimized live that to this day. But better things ahead in Chicago, because the Hawks are 3-2-2 under Jeff Blashill. They are 7th in the NHL in goals against. They were 31st last season. So Blashill was on with us before the Hawks season started. A little bit of rebuilding still to go on there, but signs that this team is taking a little bit of an upswing.
Yeah, they're a better team than they were, and they're playing better right now. I just go back to what I said about starts, and they're 3-2-2 under Blashill. For them and their fans, they're in the mix. Why not? They're still in the mix. They're not out of it. The San Jose Sharks, their brother from another mother for the last few years, has started 0-3-2. We'll see them tonight on Long Island, but they're sort of the same as taking themselves out of it early. So good for Chicago and good for Jeff Blashill. And quite honestly, the Chicago franchise is an important franchise in the NHL.
And their captain, Nick Foligno, is returning to the team after a brief absence while his 12-year-old daughter, Milana, was undergoing surgery for issues relating to a congenital heart condition. She is home. She is doing well. And good for the captain, back with his club.
No, that is great news for the Foligno family.
Any other injuries to report on?
Well, a couple of good things, a couple of bad things. No Romanov playing for the Islanders tonight. He's not at the morning skate, so that defenseman, once again, will not be playing for the Islanders when they host the San Jose Sharks. Nikita Kucherov, certainly one of the very elite players in the league, is back skating after missing a couple of games with illness with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And for the Washington Capitals, there'll be no Sonny Milano playing for them tonight, but a player who impressed us last season, Ethan Frank, will be back in the lineup for the Caps.
Some other injury news. Anze Kopitar, the captain of the Kings, out week to week with a foot injury. Caden Gooley, defenseman for the Canadiens, out 4 to 6 weeks with a lower body injury. And from Seattle, Frederick Gaudreau, out 4 to 6 weeks with an upper body injury. And defenseman Brandon Montour on a temporary leave of absence for personal reasons. So as we spin ahead to Tuesday evening, the big highlight, Brad Marchand returning to Boston, 7:30 Eastern on ESPN.
And that'll be fun to watch that. And I'm sure the Bruin fans will give him tremendous applause for his years of hard work and things that he did in a Bruins uniform, as well as being the captain of the team, by the way.
Is there any player, and the Bruins have had quite a history, but that just epitomized the work pail approach more than Marchand has?
I don't think so. I think he is a guy that, grab your lunch pail and go to work and just play like a pain in the butt night after night after night for the opposition. And boy, did he do a job for the Florida Panthers this year. I mean, when we interviewed Paul Maurice on the trading deadline, he had to take time off from the interview to go and do something in the off. So we find out later that was the exact moment they told him they were going to get Marchand. And I remember, you could wonder, well, will Marchand help them? I mean, he's his age, he's slowed down. Man, oh man, he helped make a third line maybe the best third line we've seen in decades. So what a player he is. He sometimes goes over the top with his histrionics, but boy, every team would love to have him.
I'll be looking forward to seeing the first of his former teammates that he takes some liberty with.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I'd love to see if he goes after Zadorov. He would have been a teammate of his.
Yeah.
But at 6, what is he, 6'8" or something? Zadorov is a huge man. I know, he'll do something. That's for sure. Something will happen.
I think it's going to be Charlie McAvoy. That's just my early hunch here.
Well, let's see. We'll let everybody know on NHL Wraparound.
Before we go, I want to go back to our website, NHLWraparound.com. We have New York Centric, written by our friend Patrick Hoffman. We have Neil's Nuggets. That will be coming out Tuesdays and Thursdays. So our regular schedule now, we're recording short shifts Mondays and Fridays, Wraparound on Wednesdays, Neil's Nuggets Tuesdays and Thursdays. So you've got coverage from us 5 days a week now, and I'm thrilled the way that is going. But Neil's Picks is turning out to be a real highlight here because you are up to 20 games over 500 right now with a 38-18-8 record. And if you want to check out Neil's Picks, you can only see it on NHLWraparound.com. And I have a feeling that if anybody wants to drop a couple of fishnagels down, they might want to pay attention to which teams you're picking each night.
Well, you know what? I mean, the record speaks for itself, and we'll see if we can keep it going. It's a fun thing to do, and hopefully folks out there are getting some fun out of it too. But subscribe. That's all I can say is subscribe.
The record speaks for itself. How's your arm feeling?
They're good. About patting myself on the back, and
that's it.
Yeah,
right
well,
there.
Yeah, I got it once in a while. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut now and then.
Well, it's a busy night across the league on Tuesday. Looking forward to seeing who your selections are. And you know what else I'm looking forward to? Wednesday on NHL Wraparound, when we are going to be joined with the 44-season veteran play-by-play man of the Toronto Maple Leafs, who will be retiring after the 25-26 season, Joe Bowen.
Oh, that'll be a lot of fun and really, really great. I remember doing our show with Sam Rosen. That was so much fun. And you know what's going to be great is to be able to talk to Joe about his career in Toronto and then see his reaction to the Blue Jays going back to the World Series for the first time since 1993.
You brought this show full circle beautifully. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Enjoy the hockey on Tuesday, and be sure to tune in for Wraparound on Wednesday.